Hello there. In the first part of this talk, I was a bit negative about some mathematics, so-called numerology, angel numbers and so forth. And I want to try to be, let's say, positive now. Mathematics was invented, by the way, by the Sumerians some 4,500 years ago. The Chinese then introduced negative numbers 2,000 years later, and it was the Mayans who included zero. People being what they are, the first applications of maths were for commerce and taxation, followed by astronomy and calendars, because knowing the rhythms of the year was vital for agriculture. But it wouldn't be until the 15th century before new ways of thinking began to come at pace with new discoveries. The visionary work of Galileo, Newton and Leibniz revolutionized our beliefs and laid the foundations for modern science and technology. Now, question is, can mathematics ever be called sacred? The answer lies in the fact that it's virtually impossible to measure or calculate anything exactly. And some of the most interesting and important numbers, take a deep breath here, don't even have a fixed value. What? That's weird. It's literally irrational. Grab yourself a pencil and a ruler and draw a right-angled triangle with, say, base 5 centimeters and height 5 centimeters. It's going to be easy to measure the length of the long sloping side, isn't it? But Pythagoras tells us that this length is 5 times the square root of 2, which is not an exact number. As a decimal, it's 1.41, continuing to infinity with no pattern. And the roots of prime numbers turn up frequently in mathematical problems. Actually, the Babylonians, the ancient Egyptians and the Greeks all knew about this long before Pythagoras, but they could never quite put their finger on it because they used fractions, not decimals, for numbers that aren't whole. So the square root of 2 is about 7 divided by 5. The most well-known of these irrational numbers is pi, the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter. It's about 3.14, or 22 divided by 7. Its decimal value has now been calculated to over 31 trillion places without any pattern. This special number is even celebrated worldwide on March the 14th, 3.14 in American date format, celebrated by naturally eating pies. Is all this pointless? Well, actually not at all. Irrational numbers like these are used to encrypt our financial transactions online, as well as to create national security codes. Now, it turns out that pizza and ice cream are not the only good things to come out of Italy. In 1202, Leonardo Bonacci, also known as Fibonacci, introduced the world to the golden ratio, named by the Greek letter phi. True, it had been known to Indian mathematicians 1400 years earlier, and the Babylonians, the ancient Greeks, the Egyptians also realized it had something to do with the geometry of nature. It was built into the design of the Great Pyramid of Giza, presumably to make the structure in harmony with the Earth. Fibonacci, though, showed us how fundamental it is for understanding how things grow, and that includes us. Here's a simple example. Oh, you may like to get your pencil and paper out again. There are 2 kinds of reproductive bees, drones and queens. Drones have only one parent, a queen, whereas queens need 2 parents, a drone and another queen, Let's count the ancestors of one drone. He has one parent, who herself has two parents. So our friend has three great-grandparents, two queens and a drone. Then he has five great-great-grandparents, three queens and two drones. You get the idea. The family tree now reads 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, called the Fibonacci sequence. It's a mathematical model of natural growth because each number is the sum of the two before it. And dividing one number by the one before it gets us closer and closer to the value of phi, about 1.62. But of course, the sequence is infinite, making phi an irrational number. Now, Fibonacci numbers are found throughout nature. For example, the head of a sunflower having 21 and 34 intertwining spirals of seeds. The branches of plants and trees grow in this sequence. The main trunk produces a branch, which creates two growth points. One of the new stems then branches into two, while the other one lies dormant, and so on. The eye, fins, and tail of a dolphin divide its body in the golden ratio. Grab your ruler again, a calculator, and a mirror. Measure the length of your head, excluding hair. Divide this by its width, excluding ears. Well, no one's perfect, but on average, the result will be 1.62. The same proportions are found throughout the rest of our bodies. It's natural growth. Have you ever wondered why the pentagram has been revered throughout history as a magical symbol? Divide the length of any of its lines by the next shorter one, and we get phi exactly. So this shape represents our life force, the spirit. Of course, starfish always knew this. The DNA molecule measures 34 by 21 angstrom for each cycle of its double helix spiral. And speaking of spirals, rotating lengths of Fibonacci numbers around a point creates the logarithmic spiral, discovered by the German artist Albrecht Dürer. This spiral is found on snails, pine cones, nautilus shells, the nerves of our eyes' corneas, and the spiral arms of galaxies in the Milky Way. Still not convinced of its importance? The Fibonacci sequence is used to create internet search algorithms. But it's not really the numbers that are important here. It's the geometric proportions of things. Phi represents natural beauty and the spirit of life itself. And it was those Italians again who made us realize it. In the 15th century, the mathematician and monk Luca Pacioli told his friends about it. And among his friends were Pietro Perugino, Piero della Francesca, and Leonardo da Vinci. The Renaissance was born. These artists began to use phi deliberately in the design of their work, their canvases being divided into rectangles with Fibonacci lengths, such as 8 units by 13. The result was that paintings now for the first time had natural proportions, enhancing their beauty. The most famous examples are the Mona Lisa and the Baptism of Christ. The same idea has been used in architecture, with Fibonacci rectangles seen from the Parthenon in Greece to the United Nations Secretariat building in New York. In music, the structure of the formal boundaries in Debussy's symphony La Mer also follows the Fibonacci sequence. And I have shamelessly used the same thinking in the structure of my novel, The Unbroken, a love story, an adventure through mysterious worlds of nature. Each chapter has a Fibonacci number, and every section of text has an exact Fibonacci number of words in thousands. So of course, you're bound to think the book is beautiful. Mathematics is a wonderful subject, invented to help us understand the world. But it also contributes to our spiritual path. Bonacci, Da Vinci, Dürer have shown us that maths can indeed be genuinely sacred.